I believe the 3rd District deserves to have representation that votes consistent with the values of the voters, and that's what they could count on from me.
Terri Bonoff is challenging right-wing incumbent Erik Paulsen in Minnesota's 3rd Congressional District. Terri and Tim O'Brien take measure of Paulsen's record and the changes Terri will bring to Washington. From the heart of the 3rd Congressional District, the Junkyard Democrats return with a remix of their hit, He Talks the Line. It's about Mr. Paulsen.
He talks the line.
America deserves better than this.
And there's more. Donald Trump fan Philander T. Overman ruminates about the hustler who would be president.
I welcome being conned.
And we dust off an older but still resonant commentary on gun regulations.
No one is trying to take away our guns.
This is Democratic Visions. Here's producer Jeff Strait.
Welcome to Democratic Visions. From Anoka and Champlin to Eden Prairie and Bloomington, the Congressional District 3 race is going to be very close. Here's Tim O'Brien with challenger Terri Bonoff.
Minnetonka's Terri Bonoff, after a long and distinguished business career, won an election to the Minnesota State Senate more than 11 years ago, representing Minnetonka, Woodland, and portions of Plymouth. Since then, Senator Bonoff has made a mark in St. Paul as an effective advocate on both sides of the partisan aisle for early childhood and higher education and workforce development. She's also been a resident and practical voice for small business, better affordable health care, the environment, and reducing government waste. She's accomplished this by truly living up to her campaign slogan of uniting the middle. That is to say, she works with all of the legislatures to get practical and real results for all of her constituents. Terri, welcome to Democratic Visions.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Now, as we all know, in November, the voters in the 3rd Congressional District can send Erik Paulsen, the Republican incumbent, packing and send you on to Washington. Terri, tell us a little bit about your background. Tell our viewers what are they going to get when they elect you to Congress?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for that question. So I'm actually a 3rd generation, 3rd District resident. My grandfather started Jackson Graves in 1946. My father left his service in the Army to work for my grandpa, and I joined the family business after that. So not only have I lived in the 3rd District my whole life, but I'm a 3rd generation businesswoman as well. I started in the family business, but then moved on to Tonka Toys, where I was a manager of promotional services, did their PR, their promotions, and their marketing communications, and ended really a 20-year business career as the first woman Vice President, General Manager at Navarre Corporation, where I led their largest division, the Computer Products Division. I started at Navarre when that division was $25 million, and when I left, it was over $200 million in sales. So,
wow. So how does that translate into politics, that business background?
When I left Navarre, I did so to be home with 4 teenagers, and that was a wonderful thing.
You may have rethought that once in a while.
Right, but I was home for that time and got very involved in the community, whether it be my kids' schools. I was a president of the Babe Ruth Baseball League. I was on the Minnetonka Planning Commission, and I saw many ways that I felt as though we ought to be doing better on behalf of our community. So in particular, education. So I ran for the state Senate to make a mark in education, as well as to deliver government services. We all, people in business always say they should run it more like a business, and people in government say they don't understand, but actually it can be run more like a business. And so I brought that sensibility to my work in the legislature. So just one example of how that plays out. We in the state government have many different agencies, and in each agency they would have all the infrastructure, for example, say for IT. And so IT would be housed in each agency as a complete unit. And there was so much duplication and waste. So I actually worked with former Representative Keith Downey and Phyllis Kahn, and the 3 of us carried legislation to consolidate IT, which we did, and we've now saved the state of Minnesota over $45 million just from doing that. So bringing that kind of business approach to my work, and then then I worked in the area of education, and so I'll be happy to share about that as well.
Well, but that's illustrative of the fact that you were working with Republicans, because Keith Downey represented my House district as a Republican for a number of years.
Yes.
I don't want to be pejorative, but your opponent in the 3rd Congressional District race, Erik Paulsen, I describe him as a career politician. Now, I'm aware that he had a kind of a part-time job while he was serving in the state legislature, but it seems to me that with that business background, you have the ability to get things done that haven't been accomplished by Mr. Paulsen to date. Do you agree with that?
I have carried with me the lessons I learned in business with everything I've done, and I know I would do that in Washington. So, the lesson of having a sound strategy in everything you do, of using creativity as how to address serious challenges, and most importantly, bringing discipline to my work. And so that's what I've done at the State Senate. That's what I would do in Congress. For example, I talk about the Affordable Care Act. Here's something that desperately needs reforming. This Congress,
Improvement.
Yes, improvement.
The Republicans have been trying to throw that out, Mr. Paulsen included, continually vote to overthrow it, whereas it needs work.
Exactly.
And ignoring any opportunity they might have to cure the problems.
Right, so he's voted, I think, 60 times.
60?
Right, to repeal the Affordable Care Act. So that's not effective, that's not leadership. You have to be willing to roll up your sleeves and do the work that's necessary to reform it. And I bring up the Affordable Care Act because we've got a serious situation in Minnesota. We've got Blue Cross Blue Shield is going to be pulling out of the individual market. Many people are going to lose their health insurance, are going to have to go back out and get new health insurance, and we believe that the premiums are going to be significantly higher. So I would directly correlate that problem with the ineffectiveness in Congress because, for example, if Congress had said, okay, small businesses who carry the burden of the health insurance costs and of making sure that each and every employee has health insurance, if Congress had said, all right, you small business, you can have pre-tax dollars to give to your employees in really the style of, say, a voucher where they can go to the individual market to get insurance. Now you could take the problem of these weak individual exchanges that are filled with people who are very ill and low income, and you could drive healthy people there. If you could do that, you would keep the costs down, you would preserve the strength of the individual marketplace, and you wouldn't have the problems we have. But yet, because they focused on this repeal rather than reform, now we're going to be in a situation where people in our community and people in Minnesota are going to have some very tough times ahead when it comes to health care.
Your opponent, Erik Paulsen, styles himself a moderate, but my review of his record shows that he's anything but moderate in his approaches to the necessary business of the country. Can you draw some contrasts between yourself and Representative Paulsen, please?
Well, for one thing, the people of the 3rd District resoundingly rejected the ban on gay marriage, and I was never more proud of them when they did that. And yet, Congressman Paulsen got an award for his efforts to actually put the ban on gay marriage into the Constitution. And so you might say, well, that's a social issue, and I would point to it and say it is becoming much more than that. Number one, it's just plain, wrong and inconsistent with my values, but number two, it has a chilling effect on businesses and on the economy. So if you look at what happened in North Carolina and in Indiana, when the legislatures put discrimination into their laws with regard to the LGBT community, businesses left those states. And then in Georgia, where the legislature tried to do that, the Republican governor understood that that wasn't very smart, and so he vetoed that legislation. So the fact that Erik Paulsen takes positions that, number one, aren't consistent with what the people of the 3rd District believe, value, or want, and number two, they're actually antithetical to what's good for our economy and good for our environment. And just another shout out to the 3rd District, because the companies in our community have been leaders on this. Whether it be General Mills, Cargill, or Target, they have said they want to have policies that represent all the people in the community and that understand that all people should have equal right to be a part of our economy.
Well, I can't speak to the motivation behind Mr. Paulsen's politics, but did you not receive an endorsement from the Human Rights Campaign.
The HRC is the group, the Human Rights Campaign, that really stands for the importance of not having bias due to gender orientation. So that covers that. But let me also say that I've been endorsed by Emily's List and Planned Parenthood because I am somebody who believes in women's access to all health care, whether it be reproductive or all health care. And my opponent is actually not pro-choice.
Well, he's not pro-choice. He voted to defund Planned Parenthood, did he not?
He was a co-author of the bill to defund Planned Parenthood.
Ridiculous.
And there was a letter that got sent to President Obama, signed by many members of Congress, and he was one of them, that actually called Roe v. Wade a tragedy.
Well, there's probably tons of issues that distinguish you from Representative Paulsen, but let's talk about gun violence. What is your position with respect to guns, and what is his position?
I think we need leaders who aren't aligned with the NRA, but rather who are listening to the voice of the people to say this has got to stop. So I would be for universal background checks. I believe that if the FBI or other intelligence organizations have said that this person is on a no-fly list or is a suspected terrorist, they shouldn't have any access to weapons. And
excuse me, but isn't it true that Representative Paulsen voted 13 times to block efforts to bring the no-fly, no-buy gun safety measure that you just identified to the House floor?
I do believe so, yes.
Wow.
Tim, the other thing is, generals have said that military-style grade weapons, don't have a place on our streets.
Well, I know that Representative Paulsen is a favorite of the NRA. He gets a very high grade. The last grade I saw was A- from that organization. I cannot believe that reflects the sentiment of the typical voter in the 3rd Congressional District.
I believe the 3rd District deserves to have representation that votes consistent with the values of the voters, and that's what they could count on from me.
So Terri, I know that you're out meeting as many residents of the 3rd District as humanly possible and probably working day and night. In fact, I know you're working day and night on this campaign.
Yeah.
What are the people that you're talking to, what are their concerns? What are they looking for in a representative that they're not getting at the present time?
When I talk to people, I hear over and over that they're upset that people won't work together. They are very upset about the partisan rancor and the gridlock.
Your instance about the Affordable Care Act, which we all know it's got some problems, but
right.
Why couldn't that thing be fixed over the last 4 years? It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. So the Affordable Care Act is one thing I do hear about. I hear from seniors that they're concerned about prescription drug costs and the fact that Medicare does not fully cover that. And so, again, this is a solution that would have been pretty easy for them. They should have said the federal government can negotiate drug prices. That should not be that mysterious. We should definitely give the federal government that ability to do that. Another thing I hear about is gun safety. We did a survey, and that was the number one thing that was on people's minds, is they want laws passed that help keep our communities safe and prevent gun violence.
It seems to me, and this is just a very broad and general observation, that you've got some right-wing zealots in Congress here, and you have some left-wing zealots here, but there's got to be a middle. Sure, you'd like to work with this group and that group, but there's got to be a broad middle that should be interested in getting things done. And unfortunately, at least in the House of Representatives, the right-wing zealots are controlling the agenda, or so it seems to me.
Absolutely.
And I think Paulsen's part of that right-wing agenda.
Well, in terms of the gun violence, Paul Ryan, when he would not bring that forward, I think he got so much grief that he tried to have some watered-down version, and he couldn't even bring that to the forefront. So that tells you that the leadership that is in place is not in the best interests of the people. It is truly standing with the NRA. And that is just one example. So they talk about that. They talk about the concern around the environment. Particularly our millennials are very engaged in this race. We had 30 interns working with me this summer.
Really?
Yeah,
Nice.
And they're very concerned about the Republican platform, the discriminatory beliefs that are part of that platform, the anti-LGBT, the fact that they're not supporters of common sense efforts to curb global warming, and that not being pro-choice is actually part of that platform. And it's hard to believe that the Republicans who are in leadership and Congressman Paulsen are on the wrong side of history on so many issues. I believe that we do have to conduct our campaigns and our elections in a more fair and respectful way. And so I'm also willing to point out where Congressman Paulsen has done some things that are really good for our community. You know, his work on sex trafficking and his work
He worked with Senator Klobuchar on that, did he not?
Right, yeah, absolutely, and the medical device tax. Although again, on the medical device tax issue, while that piece was good, making sure that that wasn't part of what paid for the Affordable Care Act, it's okay to take that away, but then you have to replace it. How are you going to have this thing work? So it's not personal, it's really a matter of records. And I think my record and where I stand, my values, my vision, and my views is more consistent with the community.
I think that you have very good prospects of unseating Representative Paulsen, provided that you can tell the voters that Representative Paulsen is not a moderate. You could just point to his voting record, and that would dispel any notion to that effect. So that's a big challenge ahead of you to bring that information out to the voters. I'm sure you're going to do it.
We'll do that.
But it's going to be hard. I think you're providing the voters in the 3rd Congressional District with a clear choice, and that you'll be a great representative.
Well, thank
Good
you
to see
very
again.
much. Good to see you, Tim.
Now, let's not waste any time. From the heart of the 3rd Congressional District, here is an updated encore from the Junkyard Democrats. It's called He Talks the Line, and it is about Mr. Paulsen. Oofta.
I keep a close watch on his party line.
I keep my eyes wide open all the time.
I keep my radar on for lies that blind without a spine. He talks the line.
Paulsen, Republican.
He's got a way to keep you on his side.
He'll give you pain with votes he tries to hide.
His popularity will take a slide without a spine. He talks the line.
America's job creators, and some here in Washington.
Erik Paulsen, Republican.
As sure as night is dark and day is light.
He votes for BS from the wingnut right.
For big buck donors, he will fight their fight without a spine. He talks the line.
America deserves better than this bill, and you deserve better. Thanks for being here today and having your voice be heard. There's no reason that their government can't do the same thing.
For big buck donors, he will fight their fight without a spine. He talks the line.
Now, thank you, boys. With all due respect, I hope we won't need another encore in 2 years. Last spring, improv humorist Jon Spayed, in the guise of his character Philander T. Overman, and yours truly, had a chat about Mr. Trump. Well, Philander, welcome back to Democratic Vision.
Thanks, Jeff.
It's been a while since you've been here. And the reason we want you back is you, like myself, are kind of typical Minnesotans.
I think so.
Yeah,
I really do.
And it's a point of view that doesn't get across all that often, does it?
No, the regular guy who's had a few problems but is pulling himself together.
That's
really,
me.
That's the perspective
that's
I
me.
have. Yeah.
Now, what do you do? Do you watch a lot of television news?
Oh, all the time.
All the
Learning
time?
tonight, Jeff.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're an expert on television coverage of the current run of elections. And
Well, a lot has gone in here, I tell you.
Yeah.
We're still working on it. Yeah.
now, what candidates do you find most appealing?
Well, I have to go, Jeff, with the guy from New York. Yes, Trump.
Oh,
my
Donald.
God.
You like Trump, huh?
I don't know if I like him, Jeff, but you know, some of us have something inside that's kind of turbulent, and we need something outside to connect our insides to. You follow me?
Yeah.
So that our insides make sense to us. And when I look at him, my insides make sense to me.
Anyone who knows me knows these words don't reflect who I am.
So you're not concerned that he's being portrayed as kind of a con man of the highest order?
I welcome being conned. I relax when I realize that I'm being conned, that I'm being taken for a ride. Jeff, I want the ride. I love the ride. I go for it. I think he's the thing. I think he's a meme, Jeff. He's ready and he's rested and he's tanned and he's going to take over. It's going to be leadership, disruptive leadership. That's the term for it.
He's also kind of a deal maker. How do you...
Absolutely. Deal, the art of the deal. He's going to deal, and he's dealing, and then the deal is going to come down. You know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me 3 times, I'm still enjoying it. Shame on you with Trump.
Well, you know, we diverge on Mr. Trump. I'm kind of frightened by the guy. I'm not frightened by you.
No, thank you. I appreciate that, because that way I feel better about our relationship.
So you watch a lot of television?
I 24/7 practically, Jeff. I just watch it all the time.
After the candidate debates, you're watching the pundits?
Yes. I'm focused on what they have to say.
So sometimes there are up to 8 pundits per program.
Yes, that's right.
You know, Wolf Blitzer and the 4 on his left, 4 on his right. I kind of burn out after 4. What about you?
Well, you know, you're right. I like to have one pundit tell me what they said, you know, and then, but by the time we get to the second pundit, it's all kind of mixing around with the voices I already have in my head, and so I'm confused. And then any others that get added in, it just adds to the frantic clutter up there, Jeff. So it's a problem, yeah. But I figure there are 8 sides to every question. So why not?
Philander?
Yes.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, you're very welcome, Jeff. Okay, sorry about that handshake.
On October 5th, former Arizona Congresswoman Gabby Giffords met with local leaders in Apple Valley and Minnetonka. They are supporting candidates who are fighting for legislation that helps keep guns out of the wrong hands to save lives. 86% of Minnesotans support responsible changes to our gun laws to help keep guns out of the wrong hands. And now this.
When I read in the Star Tribune that a politician we voted for and supported has again weaseled out on the gun control issue, I figure they've just told me, get lost, Douglas.
We have to tell Congress it's time to restore the ban on military-style assault weapons and a 10-round limit for magazines to make it harder for a gunman to fire 154 bullets into his victims in less than 5 minutes. Let's put that to a vote.
President Obama has been on the side of sane and effective gun control laws. So have the states of Colorado, Connecticut, and Maryland.
We approached the Connecticut legislature with love and logic.
States like Colorado, Connecticut, and countries like Norway and Australia have had horrible mass killings and have gotten down to business.
They responded with respect and the strongest gun responsibility legislation in the nation.
Their lawmakers passed good gun control laws, but not here in Minnesota. When I hear lawmakers explain that this is too difficult or we can't get to votes, it's like they're telling me, screw you.
All of the children were affected. So many of our people were so devastated with funerals going on that
there were two boys that went to school that day and never came home.
I saw a tweet on my phone that there had been a shooting in the Bryn Mawr neighborhood.
Let me ask you, what's so difficult about limiting the size of ammo magazines? What's so difficult about ensuring that gun sales are registered? And what's so difficult about universal background checks? The biggest complaint I've heard about any of these is it may inconvenience us. I think it's a small price to pay. sanity is being outgunned in Minnesota by the NRA and by excuses.
In Minnesota, you can vote early. Go for it. Your state, your family, and your nation need your help.
Democratic Visions is handcrafted by volunteers from Eden Prairie, Hopkins, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington. Watch us on select cable systems and on our YouTube channel. This is Carol Sundstrom.